What's up, everybody? It's Eli here from TreeFall Studios, and welcome to my annual indie game income year in review video. I do one of these every year, and we're going to take a look into a ton of data, and you can see where all of my income came from in my full-time indie game studio this year. I'm crossing my fingers. This is the third day in a row I'm trying to get you guys this information. The first day I filmed this video, it ended up being more than 30 minutes long, and then I decided to scrap that, start over, and cut out a bunch of my extra thoughts and put those into other videos. And then yesterday I tried filming this again, and once I got to the very end of the video, it was on the very last slide, my computer crashed and I lost all of the data. So here is the third time in a row. Let's jump in and let's try to get this filmed finally for you guys so you can look at my year in review and see where I made my income. Alrighty guys, so we're going to jump in the computer here, and this is going to look familiar to you if you saw last year's video. I'm actually making the same presentation, but I've changed all the data for this year and I've added on to last year's data. So this first slide is the 2025 Indie Studio income breakdown, and this is going to be showing you guys where I made all of my money. So let me show you the categories now. Patreon is 1%, Xbox is 1%, Atari VCS is 3.7%, Steam is 2.8%, and PlayStation is 91.5%. We're all the way up to about 92% this year, baby. Let's go, PlayStation. This is very similar to last year. Should be no surprise for you guys. I was at about 84 to 85%, if I remember correctly, on PlayStation, and all those other four platforms were about 15% of my revenue. And this year, those platforms are shrinking and the PlayStation is growing. So this is going to look even bigger next year. It's going to basically be just PlayStation. Xbox will be non-existent next year. I'm not even sure we'll get another check from Xbox. The VCS is going to shrink down much lower than Steam, and it will basically be a little bit of Steam income dribbled in. Whoever wants to be part of the Patreon team and support the studio that way, and basically all of the income is going to come from PlayStation. So here is my yearly total comparison. A little bit of a caveat I need to mention. I've re-recorded this video so many times I keep forgetting if I've said things or not. This data on this slide and this slide is based on net revenue of what has actually hit the bank January through December. But that's a little misleading because the money that I earn in January, so what hits the bank in January, is actually from the previous year's sales in December. So this stuff can kind of get thrown off a little bit. So like this is not exactly the right picture, and I'm going to show you in a couple of slides a more positive outlook in just a second. But you see it looks like we're going down again this year in 2025, and that's because 2024 was so bad and that December was so bad. So my January of 2025 had a really low number hit the bank, but my December sales for right now currently actually are doing all right. So like rolling into 2026, it's going to look a little bit better, and I've actually sold more copies of games and more games in 2025 than I did in 2024. I just won't get that money until the next year. So you can see once again in our big peak years, 2022 was really high. The last 2 years were abysmal, and overall this year is virtually the same as last year, so really not good enough. You can see we're only at about a 2.5% decline basically from what actually hit the bank last year to what is going to hit the bank this year. But rolling into 2026, hopefully things will be a little bit better. So let's move on and break this down a little bit more digestible for you guys so you can see it stacked on top of each other. This was a slide I created last year so you could just see, even though that the PlayStation was on a downward trend, you could see just how much like visually it's sitting above the Steam and the VCS bubbles, like how many hundreds of times you would have to stack those up, you know, in order to make the PlayStation income basically. Xbox is not even on this chart because Xbox is maybe like a fourth this year of the Steam maybe. Yeah, I think it's about a fourth of that, and you can see how low that Steam number is. It would basically be sitting on that baseline. It would just be sitting on the line. It doesn't even really chart, so it's not in the chart. So sorry about that. But you can see PlayStation was like on a downward trend over the last couple of years, and that's not specifically due to PlayStation. I just think that's the industry overall is on a highly downward trend. But you can see that we're actually starting to U-shape upwards, and we're going in the right direction now for PlayStation. And the good news is like, so this dot right here, it's kind of hard to see. It's actually better. It doesn't even look right, to be honest. I wonder if I have the 2023 number correct in the chart, but 2025 is actually better than 2024 and 2023 for PlayStation as of December 15th. So it's not even the entire year's sales, all the way up to just December 15th. So there's 2 more weeks in the year that I could earn money and make that dot go a little higher. I've actually made more than the last 2 years. And so we're going back in a U shape, going up in the PlayStation. And you can see the VCS and Steam were very low, but they were starting to go upwards over the last couple of years. And now they're going in the opposite horseshoe shape, and they're going negative. So let's break these down a little bit closer, and we'll look at them more individually. Here's some data on Steam. Steam, it's kind of hard to really quantify this because Steam per se, I would make more money if I put more games on Steam. That is for sure. Like, I haven't launched any games in the last 2 years. And the weird thing is, if you look at this chart, we're going down, then we're going up, and then we're going down, so we're on a negative trend. But still, this year and last year, I made more money without launching any games than the previous 2 years in which I launched 4 games. So, like, obviously, if I would have launched some games this year, like, this would have been even higher, basically. But over the last 4 or 5 games I've launched on Steam, they basically made no money. They don't even make their money back. And this continued sustaining a little bit of sales on Steam is basically just 2 games, to be honest. It's just Maze 1 and The Letter. Those are the only 2 games that really get featured in the discovery queues of people. They have a lot of positive reviews and they continue to sell. Tilting Tiles has picked up slightly a little bit this year and started to filter in a little bit, and random people have purchased it, and in a few other countries random people were purchasing it this year. But other than that, it's pretty much, those are the only games that kind of did all right on Steam. And the Orb games basically, only sold $100 or so. They sold nothing compared to the PlayStation. And it's so interesting, the Orb series is my most successful franchise in terms of dollars on PlayStation, and I think even maybe if you're including the Wii U and all that other stuff, it's really my top earning franchise. And they don't sell anything on Steam. So a lot of my games, genre dependent, they don't sell well on Steam because the genre doesn't really fit the platform too well. But just my interesting tidbit for this is that I'm still maintaining a baseline level of sales, even though I haven't launched anything. I put $200 cost on 2025 because I paid for 2 game fees to release some more games in 2026 on Steam. However, my Steam sales are so low, and this is going to be in another video, so I'm not going to talk about it too much now. I'm probably just going to eat that cost and not even do the development time on those games, because to be honest, it's better just to eat the $200 and just lose that $200 than spend a couple of months porting those games and spending a few $1,000s porting the games to only make back $500 or $600 and be negative $1,500 or so. I'd rather be negative $200 and just get the games out on PlayStation. And that's kind of my thinking going forward. So I really shouldn't have done that. I was thinking I'll hit the Steam platform hard, but after doing my year in review and really looking at all the numbers, I'm kind of man, Steam did not perform well for me, so I probably will just skip that going forward. Here's our yearly trend for the Atari VCS. You can see we're on a massive slope, and then now we're shooting down into the ground, and next year projected will be so much lower than this. I have a whole video on this called the Atari VCS development is dead. You guys can check that video out if you're interested. I don't want to hash it out too much here, but really the overflowing thought of the VCS is basically they're not really equipped right now. Like Atari is not really giving the VCS team the resources that they need in order to meet the demand and take care of all the developers that wish to get on the system. So basically, you could try to reach out to them and try to get your game on the system, and you could be waiting for months and never get your game on the system. They also changed their payout structure, and now it takes way longer to get paid. So there's just a lot of negatives on the system. I assume more devs will be pulling off of the system as time goes on, and then I feel like Atari is just going to wrap that up because they're not like the big management at Atari doesn't really like the VCS, even though the VCS team really likes the VCS. And my thinking is that like the overhead CEO of Atari kind of wants to get rid of that and sweep it under the rug, basically. So it's going forward, it's not really a viable platform, and I can see the sales are going to keep going down and down and down. This chart was not actually on last year's graph. On last year's presentation, I actually extended it back all the way to 2018 so you guys can get an idea of my PlayStation sales. You can see I was on the big growth of sales before we hit, the pandemic, before you got to any of that stuff. And then you can see 2021, obviously a lot of people were earning a lot of sales in those couple of years, and that's when we really shot up. And then you can see the last couple of years were on a downward decline, which is basically following the industry kind of in a way. But now you can see we're actually shooting backwards up, heading back towards the direction of those really good years. And if I want to put a prediction on it, my 2026, I think theoretically, if I can do everything that I would plan to do and I can get all of the surprise games out that I am working on and all the games I've been working on for years, and they sell somewhat along the averages of my other games, I should dwarf even 2021's income, which is the goal, because we're having another baby and we kind of need it to be above 2021's income, or else I'm not going to be able to stay in business. But it looks like we're going in the right direction. So here's my positive and smiley outlook. I am appreciative of everybody who's checked out and played all of my games over the last couple of years on PlayStation. You guys absolutely rock. So here are the games that I released over the last however many years. I had this slide last year, but I just booted these backwards. The 2019, 2020, and 2021s were not in last year's presentation. This is just to give you an idea of what I released every year. I released 2 games in 19, 2 games in 20, and 3 games in 2021. These 3 games right here, the bottom 3 games, that's my most successful year of game development ever. Maze Pedestal of Trials, Gem Collector, and Tilting Tiles all did really, really well. They hit really, really big, and you had the extended sales of like Maze and Perplexing Orb 2, which also did really well. The year 2 sales for those games plus the year 1 sales from these games made that the best year yet, basically. And then you can see in 2022, I did 5 games. Meme Run 2 is not my game. That is a TreeFall Games published game, so I have a very small revenue share on that. I really don't take too much from developers. Shout out to the TreeFall Games publishing branch. If you guys are interested, you can always message me and get more information about that. Our next publishing project partner is coming out pretty soon. It's called Backpack Boy. Just a little shout out there. I do publish games from time to time, help you guys get games on the PlayStation. So that's not my game. I released 4 games in 2022, Night Detective, Mighty Math, The Letter, and Tilt Remix. And then in 2023, I released 2 games, Micro Challenge and Bounce and Roll. And then in 2024, I released 4 games, 2 word searches, a new Perplexing Orb, and a new Tilting Tiles. And what's so interesting about this is 2024, you know that 2023 was a big drop off on that graph, but 2024 actually made less than 23, even though I had double the games. So it's just very interesting the way I think it's due to the economy, but also certain games are underperforming. And you might look at this and be like, well, yeah, those games don't look as good as some of my older games. Maybe, if it depends on what kind of games you're in. I think all of these games are good, but the word search games are the only reason I stayed in business. They both made a lot of money. Bounce Challenge made about half as much as Bounce and Roll did, and Tilting Tiles of Fires of Industry was the worst Tilting Tiles game I'd ever released. It bombed compared to all the other ones, which were all pretty successful. So yeah, there's I don't know, varying factors from all of that due to marketing fatigue, release timing, um, all sorts of different things maybe. But we're gonna move on into our good news, and here is my list of games that are released in 2025. It's very interesting. I actually did 5 games in 2025. 2 word search games, once again, a fantastic word search, exquisite word search. You can see that those look better than the art, at least, looks better than the old ones. And then Interim Odyssey, Maze Interim Odyssey, Pick a Block, and Journey of a Special Average Balloon. This is also very interesting. The only reason why we're still in business and I didn't shut down already, because I already made a video about potentially shutting down, is because 1-2 Exquisite Word Search overperformed, and it basically kept me in business, along with, not pictured here, the port of the letter to the PS5. Between those 2 games in the last quarter is basically swung us around and saved us from going under, because Pick a Block and Journey of a Special Average Balloon are my 2 worst releases ever. Those are so bad, it's basically like Steam numbers on PlayStation. They are so bad. Maze Interim Odyssey did okay. I actually really like that game. It's got some pretty big levels to it, and it's pretty cheap, and it's underperforming, especially at this point in the life cycle compared to my other Maze games. So that's a little disappointing. But like I said, the word search games did all right, the letter did good, and Maze did okay. But in 2026 and 2027, I have a ton of stuff coming to 2026. New tilting tiles, new pitter pot you guys have been seeing me do on the stream, a new game in the letter franchise, a lot of my really big new Perplexing orb stuff, a lot of my really big and popular franchises are all going to have an entry coming in the next couple of months. And there's some surprises in there, some new IP. I've got a roguelike I'm working on in the background, some secret stuff. There's some more spin-offs that I'm gonna do with maybe even potentially Annihilation, the Gem Collector, some stuff that hasn't been worked on, since 2019 and 2021, some of those years, basically some refreshes in those genres. I have a lot of stuff for 2026, a new IP, potentially Rocket Mouse as well, some of the old IP that I announced that never came out. And I'm going to jam pack this year slammed full with a ton of games and try to make more money than I ever have. And then in 2027, if we continue working, that year I will slow back down, do 2 big games, and in that year I'm going to do The Adventures of Theo and Fripp, and I'm going to do Pitter Cart, which is basically, like some of the dream games that I announced years and years ago, that our fans have been waiting for, for a long time. And also in 2026, the new Maze, we're going to have Maze Rising Trials. So there is a lot of stuff coming in 2026, and hopefully that will fund this entire coming up year and fund the development through 2027. It's kind of going to be like one of those special years where it's like there's all these games I've been working on and off for 2-3 years at this point, and they're all going to finally be able to be finished in 2026. So I'm going to have more content than usual. It's not that I'm going to be, working on a short game every single month. It's because I've been working for years on a lot of these games, and finally within the next couple of months they're all going to kind of get wrapped up, basically. So here are my key takeaways. Year-over-year increase in PlayStation sales. This is our #1 and most viable platform. Steam is still relatively similar no matter what we do. The algorithm kind of just works over time. The Atari VCS is now dead. Income is finally heading towards being sustainable in 2026. Cross our fingers. Plan on doing a lot of releases and bigger releases. Instead of just all small games, we're going to be mixing it up. Big games, small, big, small, big. Kind of like a big game every quarter and a small game in the in-between months. Patreon income is continuing to drop. We actually have more Patreon subscribers than we used to have, and we kind of do more more features for our Patreon subscribers. There's been an average of more posts than usual than the last couple of years. More YouTube videos have been coming out, so they get more shout outs in the YouTube videos. More games are coming out, so you're in the credits of more games. But I charge less now for joining the Patreon, so it's only $1, $3, or $5. So really, it's just like the tiers are lower, so the income is lower. Our social media presence, this is very interesting. It's so slow on growth. Like the previous year, I was on Thomas Brush's podcast and Thomas Stewart's podcast, and I had a pretty big boost of growth from that. And then this year, it was just me making videos, and I think I gained about 290 subscribers, is what I saw as a couple of days ago, and I got 25,000 views total on my YouTube channel in an entire year, and I made a lot. I made a lot of money for not having that many views. So the good news is for those people following my channel wanting to be full-time game developers and stuff like that, you don't have to be this big YouTuber that makes money, selling courses and making a bunch of videos and tutorials and making all these big popular game dev videos to sell games. If you're wanting to sell games, you can sell games without, being a YouTube personality, basically. This is a very minimal amount of views. Most of my YouTube contacts and dev friends get this kind of views per video. And this is like my yearly views, so for the amount of exposure I have on the internet and people who actually know about me, I have sold quite a bit of copies, especially compared to some of the other sales that I've seen from other people. So it is definitely possible, and I wish you the best of luck if you attempt it yourself. Unity fees and other software fees are continuing to increase, and it's not just the online fees of like subscription services and software. Hardware is going up, RAM is going up, all this stuff is going up. So like I'm going to need to replace my computer soon. So like all of these different fees are putting pressure on our business model and taking away income a little bit. But hopefully I have some plans in the future that I'll talk about more in depth on how to get around those and minimize those expenses. But guys, thank you for watching this presentation. The number one takeaway that you should look at is I'm positively outlooking 2026. I think sales are going to increase. I think console sales are going to increase. PlayStation is our number one and basically our only platform at this point. And I'm basically abandoning everything else and just going to be focusing on speed and PlayStation. So if you learned anything from this video, you learned that I make a lot of money on PlayStation relative to my other platforms. It's still not a lot of money per se. I'm not like making buku bucks. I'm really still not really making enough to be sustainable into the future. It needs to increase, but I'm positively looking at it that I think by my projections and looking at the games I have coming out in the following year, I think that it will be a good year in 2026. Alrighty guys, let me know in the comments below what you thought of this video. Was any of this interesting to you? I got to give a huge shout out to everybody who supports TreeFall Studios on patreon.com. I got to give a personal shout out to Thomas Stewart, Mandy, Shark and Minnow, Space My Name, and Jamil Dabir. Thank you guys for what you do for TreeFall Studios on patreon.com. I really couldn't do without you guys. I really couldn't do what I do without you guys. That is the outro I usually run through, and my words at this point on my 22-minute runtime are starting to blur together. Alrighty guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, found some of it interesting, and I'll catch you in the next one with some new thoughts on the game industry. See you guys.